Every Thanksgiving felt like a performance I was forced to watch. My brothers bragged about their careers. My mother compared bank accounts like trophies. And I sat there smiling, pretending the sting didn't reach my bones. They called me the dreamer, but what they really meant was the failure. They said I'd never make it, not after quitting the family business. But tonight, I wasn't showing up alone. Tonight, I was walking in with the man they once humiliated, the CEO they fired to save their image. The same man who found me when I was broken, who taught me that revenge can be silent, patient, and dressed in a tailored suit. As I stood on that porch, my heart didn't race with fear anymore. It beat with purpose. Would they remember what they did to him? Would they recognize what I'd become? Or would they finally see the price of their pride? The air froze before anyone spoke. My mother's smile stiffened, her fork halfway to her mouth. My father's eyes darted between us, searching for a way to make sense of what he was seeing. My brothers shifted uncomfortably, their laughter dying like candles in the wind. I could almost hear their thoughts. He brought him here? The CEO they'd fired. The man whose name they'd buried in whispered scandals, now standing in their foyer, beside the son they'd written off. I wanted to speak, but I didn't have to. His presence said everything. I didn't bring revenge. I brought truth dressed in silence, and in that silence, every false word they'd ever thrown at me began to crumble. My mother's voice trembled first. What is he doing here? The word he cut through the room like a curse. My father cleared his throat, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. This is a surprise, he said. Though it wasn't surprise, it was fear. The CEO's calm didn't waver. He greeted them like old friends, his voice smooth, polite, almost kind. I could see my family trying to piece together the story. How the man they fired could now stand beside me, confident, unbothered, almost amused. It wasn't just a reunion. It was the collision of two worlds. The one they built on lies, and the one I built on the ashes they left behind. I took a step closer to the table, the sound of my shoes echoing across the polished floor. You remember him, I said softly. My voice didn't tremble this time. You fired him years ago. The room went still again. My mother's lips pressed thin. My father looked away. The CEO rested a hand on my shoulder, steady, grounding. Sometimes, he said, his tone deliberate. The people who underestimate you are the ones who teach you the most. No one replied. Even the flicker of candlelight seemed to listen, and in that stillness I realized they weren't angry I had brought him. They were terrified of what that meant about me. The dinner that followed was silent, every bite forced. My brothers tried small talk. Weather, sports, anything to fill the void. But the CEO's calm presence swallowed the room whole. I caught my reflection in the window. No longer the boy they mocked, but a man they finally had to see. When dessert came, my mother leaned forward, voice shaking. So, what is it you do now? She asked, pretending curiosity. The CEO smiled gently before I could speak. We run a company together, he said. The room fell still again. The sound of the fork slipping from my father's hand was louder than any applause I could have dreamed of. Silence settled over the table like a thick fog. I could feel the weight of every unspoken word pressing down on us. My mother tried to smile again, but it wavered, cracking under the truth. Oh, my father cleared his throat, his pride unraveling in slow motion. You work together? He asked, voice strained. That's right, I said quietly. He believed in me when no one else did. The CEO gave a small nod, his calm presence filling the space they once owned. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Every insult, every laugh behind my back, it had led to this moment. A dinner table turned into a reckoning. My oldest brother finally broke the silence. So, you were working for him now? The word for stung, but I didn't flinch. The CEO chuckled softly. Not for, he said. With. The way he said it carried power. Quiet, but absolute. My brother's smirk faded. My father's eyes narrowed, searching for the edges of a story he no longer controlled. I wanted to tell them everything. The late nights building something real. The long talks about failure and trust. But I didn't owe them that. The truth was enough. The man they destroyed became the man who built me. I thought about all the Thanksgivings before this. Years of being measured by what I didn't have. They never asked what I was building, only what I was missing. Now they didn't know what to say. My mother finally spoke, her voice soft. We just wanted you to be secure, she whispered. I met her eyes. You wanted me to be safe, I said, not strong. The CEO looked at me with quiet pride, not approval, just understanding. The table felt smaller, the walls closer. Every lie they told themselves about success was collapsing right in front of them. The CEO raised his glass, his voice smooth but heavy with meaning. Family isn't about control, he said. It's about faith, even when you don't understand someone's path. My father's expression hardened, pride wrestling with regret. You talk like we're the villains, he muttered. The CEO smiled faintly. You're not villains, just people who forgot how to listen. The words sank deep, quiet but sharp. For the first time, my father didn't have an answer. For the first time, I didn't need one. I had already won the moment. I stopped needing their approval. Nor QE. As dessert plates were cleared, the tension eased, not from comfort but exhaustion. My mother forced a smile, trying to return to small talk, but the words felt hollow. The CEO leaned back, watching the family that once ended his career sit in silence before him. He didn't need revenge. Neither did I. When we finally stood to leave, I looked at each of them, not in anger but peace. Thank you, I said softly, for teaching me exactly who I never want to become. The CEO placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, and together we walked out. Behind us, the laughter never returned. The night air felt different once we stepped outside. Lighter, quieter, honest. I took a deep breath. The kind you only take when you finally stop pretending. The house behind me still glowed, but it no longer felt like home. For years, I thought success meant proving them wrong. But standing there beside the man they discarded, I realized it wasn't about revenge. It was about becoming someone I could respect. The CEO looked over and smiled. You did well in there, he said. I nodded, though my voice caught when I answered. I didn't do it for them, I whispered. I did it for me. We walked to the car slowly, our footsteps crunching over frozen leaves. For years, I had carried the weight of being the disappointment, the failure they mocked when I couldn't keep up. But every struggle, every sleepless night had built the strength they never saw. You ever regret forgiving them? I asked. The CEO smiled faintly, watching his breath fade into the cold. No, he said. Regret belongs to those who never learn. You've already learned. His words didn't feel like comfort. They felt like truth. As we drove through the silent streets, I stared out the window, watching houses blur by like memories. I thought about my family, not with anger, but with distance. They had built their lives on titles and numbers, while I had built mine on patience and trust. The CEO's reflection appeared beside mine in the glass. You know, he said softly, sometimes the hardest part of success is realizing you don't need their approval anymore. I smiled at that. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about letting them off the hook. Maybe it was about finally letting myself go. The CEO dropped me off at my small apartment, the one I once felt ashamed of. But tonight, it felt like freedom. I invited him up for coffee. and we sat in silence for a moment, surrounded by the warmth of something real. "You built this from nothing," he said, glancing around. I nodded, smiling. "They gave me a reason to." He laughed softly, raising his cup. "Sometimes, the people who push you down just give you a stronger ground to stand on." We sat there for a long time, two men who had been broken by the same family, and rebuilt stronger than they ever imagined. When he left that night, I stood at the window, watching the snow cover the city in silence. I thought about family. How sometimes blood teaches you pain so that strangers can teach you love. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "We're proud of you." I didn't reply. Not out of spite, but peace. Some stories don't need an ending. They just need release. I turned off the lights, smiled to myself, and whispered the truth I had waited years to say. I'm finally free. A week later, the CEO invited me to his office. A towering building of glass and steel, the kind of place my family used to worship. As I stepped inside, I realized how far I'd come. The man they'd fired now ran one of the fastest-growing companies in the city, and I was part of it. But beneath his calm strength, I saw something else, a shadow he never spoke about. He stood by the window, watching the skyline. "Do you ever wonder why your family really fired me?" he asked quietly. My heart stopped. I thought it was greed, power, pride, but his tone told me there was more. Something deeper, darker. He turned to face me, eyes calm but heavy with memory. "Your father didn't just fire me," he said. "He needed someone to take the fall." I frowned, confused. "For what?" he sighed, resting his hands on the desk. "A deal went wrong. Money disappeared. I tried to protect the company, but your father blamed me to save his name." My chest tightened. The pieces clicked together. The whispers. The sudden change in lifestyle. The way my family never mentioned that year again. "He let you lose everything," I said quietly. "And he let me hate you for it." The CEO nodded. "He made sure of it." The truth hit like a quiet storm. No shouting, no chaos, just the weight of knowing everything I'd believed had been built on lies. My father didn't just ruin a man's career. He built his success on someone else's destruction. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" I asked. The CEO smiled faintly, sadness in his eyes. "Because integrity isn't proven by revenge. It's proven by endurance." He paused. "And I needed you to learn that for yourself." I realized then that he hadn't just mentored me. He'd protected me from becoming like them. My father's legacy was built on deceit. Mine would be built on truth. Later that night, I found an old photo buried in my files. My father shaking hands with the CEO years ago, both smiling for the camera. They looked like partners then, before pride replaced respect. I stared at it for a long time, the image blurring with memory. For so long, I thought my father's choices defined me. But standing there, I realized something powerful. I wasn't the product of his decisions. I was the result of surviving them. I took the photo, placed it in an envelope, and wrote one word on the front: truth. Tomorrow, I'd deliver it to him. When morning came, I walked to my parents' office building. The same halls where they once called me a disappointment now echoed with the sound of my steady footsteps. My father looked up when I entered, startled, cautious. I placed the envelope on his desk. "You should see what truth looks like," I said quietly. He didn't open it, but I saw fear flicker in his eyes. I didn't need him to confess. I didn't need him to apologize. I just needed him to know I knew. And as I turned to leave, I realized forgiveness isn't weakness. It's closure without permission. My father didn't call for days. The silence was louder than anger. It was the sound of guilt finally catching up. I waited not for apology but understanding. When the phone finally rang, his voice was smaller than I remember. "Can we talk?" he asked. I agreed. Not because I wanted to fix anything, but because I was done running. When I arrived at his office, The photo lay open on his desk, the envelope beside it. "I didn't think you'd find out," he said. I met his eyes calmly. "You didn't think I'd ever rise high enough to see." His face fell. That was the truth he couldn't escape anymore. He leaned back in his chair, eyes glassy with exhaustion. "I was trying to protect our family," he said. "You call that protection?" I asked softly. "You destroyed a man's life, and nearly mine." For a moment, he didn't respond. The air between us was thick with years of unspoken things. "Finally," he whispered. "I thought you'd understand one day." I shook my head. "I do understand," I said. "You thought reputation mattered more than truth." His eyes dropped to the desk. For the first time in my life, I saw him as he truly was, not powerful, not proud, just human. "I'm not here to ruin you," I said quietly. "That's what makes me different." He looked up, confused. "Then why bring this back?" I stepped closer, placing the photo in front of him. "Because I needed you to see the person you buried. Not just him, me." His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. I didn't wait for them. There was nothing left to prove. For years, I chased a version of love that was conditional. Now I understood that some love isn't meant to be mended. It's meant to be released. When I stepped outside that building, the cold air hit my face like a cleanse. The sky stretched wide, endless, free, just like I finally felt inside. The CEO was waiting across the street, leaning against his car, watching quietly. He didn't need to ask how it went. He could see it in my eyes. "You didn't destroy him," he said softly. "You just reminded him of who he used to be." I smiled, exhaling deeply. "And I reminded myself of who I've become." Together, we got into the car, the past fading in the rearview mirror where it belonged. That night, I sat at my desk, the city lights flickering beyond the window. For the first time, I felt no anger, no emptiness, just peace. My phone buzzed with another message from my father. "I'm sorry." "I'm sorry." I read it once, then set it down. Some apologies don't need answers. They need time. I turned off the phone, leaned back, and closed my eyes. My family may never understand the path I chose, but they no longer controlled where it led. I had walked into Thanksgiving with a man they ruined, and walked out having rebuilt everything they tried to take from me, including myself. A month passed before I heard from my family again. I'd almost begun to believe the storm had settled, until one morning my phone buzzed with a single message from my mother. "Your father's been suspended." I stared at the screen, unsure what I felt. Anger? Pity? Relief? The truth had buried for years had finally surfaced. The board had found out about the old deal, the missing money, the name used as a scapegoat. I sat there in silence, realizing that life had a strange way of balancing itself. I didn't expose him. Truth simply has a way of finding light, even in the dark. Later that day, I drove to the office where he used to work. Security guards stood by the door, reporters gathering outside like vultures. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. I watched from the street as my father stepped out. Older somehow. Smaller. The man who once towered over me now looked like someone carrying a lifetime of regret. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I just felt sad. Success didn't taste sweet when it came at this price. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It whispers, quietly reminding us that the truth doesn't need permission to win. That evening, I visited my mother. She opened the door with red eyes, the confident spark she once carried now gone. "He lost everything," she said, voice breaking. I looked at her gently. "No," I replied. "He just lost the mask." We sat together at the kitchen table where I'd once been laughed at for dreaming too small. The silence between us wasn't cruel this time. It was fragile, human. For the first time, she reached across the table and took my hand. "You turned out better than all of us," she whispered. I didn't answer. I just squeezed her hand, finally forgiving her without saying the word. When I left her house that night, I stopped by the hill overlooking the city, the place I used to go when I felt like nothing. The skyline shimmered beneath a pale winter moon, the lights pulsing like quiet heartbeats. The CEO's words echoed in my mind. Integrity isn't proven by revenge. He was right. I didn't win because they fell. I won because I grew. And as I stood there, the cold air biting at my face, I realized I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The story that once defined me had finally reached its ending. Back home, I poured myself a glass of water and looked at my reflection in the window. Calm, grounded, unrecognizable from the man I used to be. My father's downfall wasn't my victory. My peace was. My phone buzzed again, a message from the CEO. "Proud of you. Dinner soon?" I smiled. The world outside was quiet, still, and full of possibility. Maybe family isn't the people who share your blood. Maybe it's the ones who help you find your truth when everyone else buries it. I turned off the lights, letting the city's glow fill the room, and whispered to myself, "It's over." A year later, another Thanksgiving arrived. But this time, everything felt different. The air carried peace instead of tension, and the quiet wasn't heavy. It was healing. I stood outside my parents' house again, just like that night before. Same porch, same lights, but I wasn't the same man. My father had retired quietly, rebuilding his life in small, humble ways. My mother had softened, her voice gentler now when she spoke. And me? I'd learned that success means little without peace. When I finally rang the doorbell, the sound didn't tremble through me anymore. It simply rang. When the door opened, my mother didn't hesitate this time. She pulled me into a hug before I could even speak. "I'm glad you came," she whispered. I felt her sincerity, fragile, but real. Inside, the table looked smaller, quieter. My brothers smiled awkwardly, less prideful now, more human. My father sat at the head, no suit, no power, just a man who had finally learned to listen. For a brief moment, I saw what family was supposed to be. Not perfect, not proud, but present. We were rent-fixed, but we were trying, and maybe that was enough. Dinner was quiet, but not uncomfortable. We talked about work, the weather, old family stories. The CEO's name came up once. My father nodded, acknowledging him with respect this time. He said, and that was enough. I realized then that closure doesn't come in grand apologies. It comes in small moments of honesty, in the way someone finally tells the truth without flinching. As we passed the plates around, I caught my father's eyes, and for the first time, he didn't look at me with pride or pity. He looked at me as an equal. Later that night, I stepped outside for some air. The stars shone faintly above the quiet neighborhood. My phone buzzed. A message from the CEO. "Happy Thanksgiving, kid. You made it." I smiled, typing back, "Couldn't have without you." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the smell of autumn and memory. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was leaving family behind. I was carrying them, both the pain and the growth, into something new. Forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It was about moving forward without dragging the weight of the past. Before I left, my father joined me on the porch. "You've built something good," he said quietly. "I'm proud of you." The words landed softly, late, but not empty. I nodded, meeting his eyes one last time. "Thank you," I said. "I'm proud of me too." We stood there for a moment, two men who had finally stopped running from the truth. As I walked away, I felt the night wrap around me like closure. Not dramatic, not loud, just real. Maybe every family breaks in their own way. But if you're lucky, you learn how to rebuild. Not from what was lost, but from what was found in the breaking.